You know, the fact that we can even sit here and talk about these Indianapolis Colts the way we are talking about these Indianapolis Colts right now is really something else. So I'll give you an example. It's Jerry Jeudy. We're all talking about Jerry Jeudy. The idea of the Colts trading for Jerry Jeudy, that is a winning move. That is not a rebuilding move. Trading Jerry Jeudy away is a rebuilding move. And we have to make sure that this story gets told the right way, because what the Colts have done here this season, if you ask me, so far, is absolutely remarkable. And I know that there's going to be some people who are kind of in the boat of, hey, let's not count our chickens before they're hatched. It's a little bit too soon to be talking about a remarkable season from the Indianapolis Colts. But listen, we are going into week 6. This is a 17-game season. That's a third of the way through. So let's not pretend that there is no sample size whatsoever. And I'm always of the opinion that the time of the year where you find out the truth about an NFL football team, where there's really two of them. At first, once the first month is over, as you start getting past that, what teams are doing is really what it is. And then, of course, you always have some teams that catch fire towards the end of the season and slip into the playoffs, and that's a different thing entirely. But for the most part, broad stroke, usually after that first month of the season, what you see a team do from there, that is the truth. So if that lines up with what you saw at the beginning of the season, there's no reason to question it. And the Colts are a team that coming into the season, by many, were considered to be one of the worst rosters in the NFL. I think maybe even ESPN said they were the worst, or at least the second worst. I mean, they were predicted by some to have like 2 to 4 wins. And here they are at 3-2. It doesn't look too shabby given the narrative coming into the season. And the question is, how in the heck, with that horrible roster and that dysfunction, oh, how bad things are for the Indianapolis Colts, how are they playing the way that they are playing? And here's the way that I view it. Obviously, you have a big-time head coach in that of Shane Steichen. What he has been able to do with this offense, more particularly with this running game, and then having effective play calling with both Anthony Richardson and Gardner Minshew, guys who have really almost completely different skill sets. Now, sure, Gardner has a little bit of mobility, but you would agree that that is apples to oranges in terms of comparisons of skill sets. And many times Shane Steichen has had to do it in the same game. Do you know how hard it is to install a game plan the entire week and then have to flip it right in the middle of a game for a guy who has a completely different skill set? I mean, Shane Steichen has been able to do that to perfection. I mean, the job that he has done, I believe, just goes without saying. But the other part of this that I refuse to shy away from is the fact that many of you have brought Chris Ballard through the ringer. You've dragged him through the mud, and many of the OG subscribers know, and I know a lot of you are new around here, maybe some of you even seeing me for the first time, but people who've been around since like the end of last season, which is really when this all got started, know that I am like the ultimate Chris Ballard apologist. But make no mistake, I, who has never been wrong about the Indianapolis Colts in my entire life, wrong about other things. I mean, geez, never asked me for dating advice, but I have never been more right about anything with these Indianapolis Colts than my disdain of Colts Nation being entirely unfair to this man, Chris Ballard. And it is nice to see it coming to fruition before our very eyes. After this offseason, I had a feeling that I was going to get a chance to take my Chris Ballard victory lap. And while this isn't the ultimate prize right now, I'm not taking the full victory lap, I'm certainly warming up. I'm stretching out the legs over here, you know? So I want to get into it a little bit because I think Chris Ballard deserves some credit. I could talk about Shane Steichen all day, but I just kind of want to paint the picture for you guys because I'm not sure everyone fully understands what we're looking at with this roster in terms of Chris Ballard's fingerprints on it. So I want to get into that, but before we do, as always, I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Justin. This right here is the Ride and Bench Colts cast. As always, if you are enjoying the video, go ahead, shoot it a like. It is going to help me get out to as many Colts fans as humanly possible. It's like you're a Colts fan helping out a Colts fan. What a community we can create right here, right? And then, of course, if you happen to be coming back consistently and you have to subscribe, or maybe you think you're subscribed and you're not, go ahead, check the subscribe. We're trying to get to 2,000 over here, and I want you to be a part of the journey. We are building one of the biggest and best Colts channels on planet Earth. From here to North Korea, okay? I'm building one of the biggest and the best, I hope. I have a lot of work to do. Starts with a like, starts with a subscription, but of course, just enjoy the video. So back to Chris Ballard, back to the Colts, back to this roster, because I want to talk about some of the players that are contributing, because I think this paints the picture the best. Zaire Franklin, Lord, how can you not love Zaire Franklin? And I always anytime I talk about Zaire Franklin, I take a moment to plug his podcast, The Trenches. I mean, he's been absolutely spectacular. He's getting on Good Morning Football with Jason McCourty, Kyle Brandt, right? He's starting to make a name for himself. One of my biggest validating things for myself this year is that we all knew Zaire was great in Indy. I said that I think he'd become a household name, big time linebacker, all pro caliber this season. And it looks like we're well on our way. Zaire Franklin, that's a 7th round pick from Chris Ballard, is basically the heartbeat of the Indianapolis Colts defense right now. What about Will Fries, per PFF, the number 22 guard? That's both right and left in all of football. Maybe a little bit of a slow start to the season, but there's no question with the way the Colts offensive line is performing right now. Will Fries is 100% a part of that. Will Fries is a 7th round pick and a guy that is coming to his own for this offense. How about EJ Speed, also on the trenches with Zaire Franklin and EJ Speed? Those are the two guys on our Colts that are on that show. EJ Speed has fit like a glove. I mean, Bobby Oka, who? I don't even remember who that guy is, and who cares? EJ Speed, 5th round pick. Look at how well he's contributing. I mean, it can't be denied. Jalen Jones is now starting for us. Is he spectacular? We're not right now, but he's certainly past where he should be as a rookie 7th rounder. That's Chris Ballard right there. That being said, let me pull back and let me be objective here. Jalen Jones is a guy that Chris Ballard actually gives credit to one of his scouts over himself. But it's neither here nor there. Point being is he's the guy making the decision, right? Gardner Minshew. Can we say enough about what Gardner Minshew has meant to this team? Not just coming in and Anthony Richardson in relief, but what he has meant to the development of Anthony Richardson, how selfless he has been, the team guy. He has been the ultimate Band-Aid for the Indianapolis Colts, particularly as we're seeing Anthony Richardson get injured. That's an offseason acquisition from Chris Ballard. Zach Moss. This offense would have been dead in the water, thank goodness. We saw what happened in week 1 with Deion Jackson on an absolutely horrible day. Wet the bed so bad, no disrespect, that he ended up losing his job. He went from the de facto favorite to get all of the snaps without Zach Moss to not having a job 2 weeks later, and he is going to stay unemployed, unfortunately. I'm not wishing that for him. I'm just saying how bad it was. And then you have Zach Moss coming in here for a second, just for a second, had us forgetting about Jonathan Taylor. He was acquired with a 6th round pick in a trade for Nyheim Hines. That trade is looking absolutely spectacular by Chris Ballard. Bernard Raymond, sure, a little dinged up right now, but 3rd round pick blossoming into a massively, massively talented tackle in this league. PFF had him as top 7 last year in the second half of the season, and he certainly started off very good this year before obviously dealing with the injury now. Looks like he is just on track to come out here and play versus the Jaguars this week. Josh Downs, 3rd round pick and getting stronger and stronger by the week. Juju Brent's hometown guy, took a risk drafting him when he had that wrist surgery, recovering from that surgery. He started off slow in training camp and preseason, but already right now looks like an absolute stud. I'm very, very excited about Juju Brents, another Chris Ballard guy. DeForest Buckner, that trade in 2020, trading the 13th pick for him, continues to be one that I'm incredibly happy about. Stand by, despite the fact that some people said we could have done something else with that pick. That DeForest Buckner trade is continuing to pay dividends. It's the gift that keeps on giving. Need I continue with all of the moves that Ballard has made that we are seeing help us this year, in a year that we were overachieving, and a year where everybody was coming for this guy's neck? He responded with perhaps his best offseason yet, And not for anything, I thought he had put together many, many good off seasons before. At the end of the day, I know none of you want to hear it, that Andrew Luck situation was very, very hard to navigate. And I know I'm not even going to waste my breath continuing to talk about that Andrew Luck thing, just because I know that no matter what point I make, they're just going to have people in the comment that just don't hear it. That's fine. That was an impossible situation to handle. He's done what he can, right? I mean, at what point do we just tip our cap to Chris Ballard and say not for anything? There are a bunch of guys on this roster contributing far above where they should have been. I mean, it's to me a no-brainer when you look at Chris Ballard that this guy knows what he's doing. You can sit there and argue the wins and losses all you want. The context matters, right? Not every, let's say, 7 wins, 10-loss season. Those aren't all built the same. At the end of the day, each game is played. I know history, it doesn't matter. But the whole point of talking about the Colts together is that we're allowed to have the more nuanced discussion. We're supposed to be the ones that really know, not just the ones who are speaking in generalities. And to me, when you look at the context and you take everything into account, I think Chris Ballard has done a damn good job for most of his time in Indianapolis. And really, last year was the first year you could look at that was just a complete and utter disaster. And his accountability in the postseason press conference, in my opinion, was admirable. One thing I love about Ballard is that he always shoots straight, period. You're always going to get good answers out of Ballard. He's always going to have fun, and he's always going to be honest when he can. Of course, he's going to obviously not answer things he can't answer, but he's pretty honest and pretty forthcoming with the media, and the accountability that he had at the end of last season. Obviously, after an embarrassing season like that, you couldn't come out and pretend everything was okay. But I mean, his aggression this offseason and the hiring of Shane Steichen was very consistent with his tone and the mistakes he said he made in that post-game press conference. And when you talk about turning this thing around, the hire of Shane Steichen, who Jim Irsay openly said himself, the hire of the next head coach of the Indianapolis Colts is all going to be on Chris Ballard. The Frank Reich hire, one, was the backup plan, but two, Jim Irsay had a say in that. Remember, Frank Reich had a deeply rooted history with the Indianapolis Colts. He was a part of the coaching staff during the Super Bowl years with Peyton Manning, so that was a little bit of Irsay involvement right there. This Steichen one was straight Ballard all the way, and the demeanor of Frank Reich, or rather of Shane Steichen versus Frank Reich, in many ways has been the difference. And of course, credit to Shane Steichen for being the fantastic coach that he is, but credit to Chris Ballard for really doing his due diligence. I mean, this was a very extensive job that he did looking at these coaches. And at the end of the day, he said, listen, it's not about whether or not it's difficult. You got to be right. And so far, it looks like he was right about Steichen. It looks like he was right about Anthony Richardson, despite the injury woes. And all the players I mentioned before are guys that Chris Ballard has found, drafted, and I really think built a roster that people are starting to realize is significantly better than we gave it credit for. And I just wanted to take some time to give Chris Ballard his flowers, because I feel like he gets a tough time here from the Indianapolis Colts fans. So that right there, in my estimation, is how and why we're seeing what we're seeing. Part of it was the fact that I think we were a little dismissive of what was right in front of us. These are all players that were here, we knew were here, and we just didn't give them the credit they deserve. And that's credit to them, that's credit to Steichen, and most importantly for you guys to admit, especially you Ballard haters, it's credit to Ballard, whether you like it or not. If you're going to judge him while he's down, you got to start giving him credit here, right? So that's all I have to talk about right here. Until next time, my name is Justin. This right here is the Ride in the Bench Colts cast. Shit. Go Colts.